After making a video this morning contemplating what it is that makes men go to war and die for a given cause, as well as seeing the death of the old Labour MP John Prescott today, it makes me contemplate, what is life about? Is it really simply about passing pleasures, getting lost in the news cycles, the day-to-day of life? Seems to me that all these hopes and fears of all the years will eventually be lost in eternity. This is why I tend to not be so fond of globalist liberal modernity. I believe it limits man to the minor concerns of life that don't really matter in the long run. Even asking in this day and age what's the purpose of life seems too philosophical. We're in an era of scientific rationalism. There is no meaning, just get on with it and acquire more possessions. Now, I can understand the acquisition of possessions if it serves something bigger than yourself, a family or a movement of some kind, but in and of itself it doesn't really lead us anywhere other than into nihilism. However, I don't believe the great tradition of the West was built upon this structure. I don't believe any tradition is built upon a structure like that, really. All traditions are rooted in something much bigger. They start with the idea that life is bigger than just us as individuals. Some state that one way to get meaning in life is to transcend the individual ego and see it melt into a broader collective, like a nation or a tradition. Other traditions point towards the transcendence of the ego being a movement towards God. That's the end of self-consciousness and into, quote-unquote, the kingdom of heaven. Modern man may be cynical towards such things and see them as simple fairy stories. When we look around Europe and see its beauty, one thing we find is these aren't simple fairy stories. They laid at the roots of a tradition. It's what built our art and cathedrals, many of the creators of which died poor. Maybe some of them didn't even see their creations when they were finished. So why would they build them then? Well, ultimately, it's because they were serving something bigger than themselves, be that the tradition, God, nation, and so on. And that may seem a bit meaningless to us in this day and age, given we're so individualistic, but it makes sense when you read the old Greek proverb, "A society grows great when old men plant trees, whose shade they know they shall never sit in." Personally, I think subconsciously this is what modern Western man yearns for. Something that connects him with a greater meaning, connects him with his ancestors and his descendants. And in many ways, this is the battle for the West's soul. On one side, it's got the road towards glitz and pleasure and ecstasy. The only problem with this is it tends to melt into dust once we engage with it for a while. On the other side is a road of discipline, of duty, of deeper contemplation, of foregoing the self. This does mean that you have to give up some stuff, and it might be a road of hardship at first, but eventually it melts into love. I do believe it's only the latter that can provide a meaningful challenge to modernity. It's not a revolution of anger and hatred and violence, but one of vitality, service, realignment with the spirit and nature. It's only via this that Western man, and thereby the West, will regain its soul. It's that which allows us to face death in peace, to melt back into the great tradition, the great beyond. The body and mind may well pass on, but there is that part of us that never truly dies. It survives in the tradition, it survives in the way of life. It's these things that have sustained men throughout time, and things I intend to talk more about in the exclusive area of the channel I've got coming up. Do let me know your thoughts down below, and do consider subscribing to the channel if you're new.